Welcome everyone to another Observability Clinic, best practices with Dynatrace and Ansible, leading to better auto-remediation. Here with me, Kristof Renders. Hi, Kristof. How are you doing?
Hey, Andy. I'm doing good. How are you?
Good, good. I'm really excited about this because a lot of people are asking us, hey, what can we do with the Dynatrace detector problem? So if Dynatrace detects a problem, what's an option to bring the system back to a healthy state? We have a lot of our users that are using Ansible. And this is why I'm happy actually to bring you back, because you gave this presentation in the past. But today we really, I think at least, we are going to focus on more like the practical terms, how this looks like in Dynatrace with a little bit of intro. But actually, you are running the show. So, Kristof, what have you prepared for us?
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Andy. Thanks for the invite as well. It's always nice to have a little chat with you and to show you the great stuff that our customers can do with Dynatrace. And today, like you said already, focusing on auto remediation, right? So I'm going to set the scene a little bit, right, on how Dynatrace can improve, our customers' mean time to repair. Right, we're going to talk about a couple of acronyms there as well. And then we're going to look at from a implementation perspective and our demo as well on how that actually looks like and how tools can communicate with each other to get to better results, because that's what it's all about, of course. And then there's no webinar or clinic without how to get started. So I've got a couple of steps and things that any company, anybody can take today, right, to get started on that auto remediation journey. So exciting stuff there.
Yeah, very cool. And Kristof, for those that don't know, you're completely skipped over the part of allowing you to say who you are and what you do, because you're doing this on a regular basis with our users.
Exactly. Yeah, almost forgot about that as well. So yeah, I'm Kristof. I'm leading up our innovation team here in the post-sales organization. So my team really focuses on bringing automation use cases to customers and using Dynatrace and the data that Dynatrace has to drive better business outcomes, whether it's automated release validation or, like in this case, automated problem remediation.
Let's go.
Awesome. So why don't we just get started, right? That's what we're here for. So when we start talking about remediating problems automatically, we have to also stand still about, how does an incident look like, right? What are the key moments in an incident's life? And if we break that down a little bit, at a certain point in time, something will break, right? And the time that it takes for you to notice that it's broken, right, we call that the mean time to detect. And then once you figure out why it's broken, right, we're referring here to the mean time to investigate, you can actually start to action it, right? You need to make sure that the right person, very important word, the right person is working on it. Yeah, we call that indeed the mean time to action. And then once you've established the fix of this and you've implemented said fix, right, we call that the mean time to repair. I think most of the audience who are watching this recording will recognize the mean time to repair the most, because that's a critical KPI that a lot of organizations are being tracked on, right? And then once you fixed it, you also need to make sure that the system is fully functional or operational again, right? So the mean time to restore the service. So right now we're in a happy state, right? We had a problem, somebody's working on it, that person fixed it, and like it's nothing ever happened. But unfortunately, right, at a certain point in time, something else will break, because this is just the world, right? There's a lot of change happening. So then we're looking at different metrics altogether, and that's probably the one metric that you want to have as big as possible out of all of these, and that's that mean time between failure. Now, with Dynatrace, right, our goal is to positively impact all of these metrics, and the focus on today is going to be keeping all of these timings with the little Dynatrace logo on it as short as possible, because if we can make them shorter, right, that means that the impact is as little as possible to our or your end users. Now, if you take that into account, right, and you take a look at the following graph, which actually looks at, if the number of apps grows, how much effort it takes for a team to manage that, you'll see that it actually goes or grows exponentially if you do things in a traditional way. So previous slide, we mentioned, hey, we want to keep the mean time to repair and these other times as short as possible, but at the same time, as we have more apps, it actually takes us exponentially more effort, and at a certain point in time, we'll reach an unmanageable size, meaning that adding more people does not necessarily make a lot of sense anymore, and that doesn't make it easier for us to act upon these problems, right? So we want to implement a model, right, that changes or goes away from traditional operations and uses as little manual effort as possible to resolve these kind of problems. And we leverage, of course, automation and AI to bridge that gap, right? There's a lot of data that we can use. There's a lot of automation that we can use. Why don't we marry these two things together to get to better outcomes faster? So now that we know that more apps means more effort if not done properly, add on top of that the flavor of the unknown, right? The flavor of the unknown means that apps these days are hyper complex, right? Teams or operational teams don't necessarily know what is running where and how things are impacting each other. We have microservice, we have serverless, we have, containerized environments. Everything is kind of working together somehow, right? And delivering outcomes, but not everybody necessarily knows how these apps are working together. So of course, you need a platform like Dynatrace, which kind of brings light into that darkness and ensures you to know all dependencies of each other, right? And also now know how things are impacting each other. And why do we need that? Is, well, when something does go wrong and when there is a problem, you know immediately the root cause and also all the impact that this problem has within your estate. Now, let's take a look at a customer example, right? It seems extreme, right? But this is a screenshot from an actual customer environment where we are looking at the amount of problems that were had in 7 days. So you can see that on the top right in the screenshot, and you're looking at 10,000 problems, right? 10,000 problems. These are not false positives, by the way. These are actual things that are happening in that environment because the environment is just hyper complex. You have a lot of components there. Now, if we take a look at that data, and always data is just data, right? If you don't do anything well or proper with it, right? So if we take a look at this data and we analyze the composition of all of these problems and look at what types that we have, you can actually see that the same problems, they seem to repeat themselves, right? So we have a lot of infrastructure-based alerts here, like memory saturation and CPU saturation, that is going to immediately shape how we need to resolve these problems. So half of the problems are comprised of 4 types. You can see that here. And so that means that we have a very easy focus point on where to start looking at our auto-remediation journey, which we'll talk about later on.
Kristof, just to interject here, and I know I've told you multiple times that I love this overview from you here. And for everyone that is watching this, the nice thing with Dynatrace, we have an API for everything. So that means you can actually pull also the data from your Dynatrace environment on your problems and, group it like this by problem type. And I think I would assume most organizations will probably come up with a similar picture. As you said, infrastructure-related problems are very dominant here, that then have probably also side effects to things like failure rate and response time. But I just love this a lot. And I remember, Kristof, when we showed this, you showed this in a previous webinar you did with me. The question was also, can Dynatrace also provide this out of the box? And I think this is something that we took back to the product team, that we get a visualization like this in Dynatrace out of the box. But what I wanted to say is the data is there. Use the API, pull it out, and have a look at where are your hotspots.
Yeah. Exactly. So this is, again, just using data for analysis. And this becomes very important, like I said, because as an organization, right, you don't want to do whack-a-mole for problem solving, right? Okay, this looks very cute, but of course, unfortunately, in reality, a lot of organizations operate this way. We traditionally call it firefighting, right? But there's so many problems, and if you just chase every problem individually, you're going to get stuck in that moment of chasing problems, and that, of course, doesn't scale, right? And it is not enterprise IT. So what we want to do is we want to, automate this problem remediation. We have all the data in Dynatrace that we need, right? So we have the problem, we have the impact, and we have the root cause, right? So we're going to use that data to drive automated workflows. Now we've done this with a bunch of customers already. And one of the examples that I have here is what we've done with a federal institution in the US, right? And what we've done is that we've taken the problem that was automatically ticketed in a ticketing solution, right? And where they previously took about 60 minutes to triage and remediate a very simple problem, which was just a memory issue, a memory exhaustion issue. We now do that in about 9 seconds. So once the ticket is created, right, they can just launch automatically a workflow within Ansible to reduce the mean time to repair as much as possible. Yeah. Now, before we jump into the demo, unless Andy, you have a question or something you would like to ask.
No, I think, I mean, impressive numbers. And I believe this, exactly what you show here, it correlates extremely well with, I think, your second slide where you say complexity is exploding and you cannot scale this by adding more people. What you need to do is you need to automate. And I think this is, I don't know, I cannot do the math now in my head, but it's about 9 seconds versus 3,600 seconds. That is a lot of improvement. And now it's fantastic, great stories. And go ahead. No more questions right now.
No, awesome. But the reason why we stop here before I go to the next slide, which is all about, well, what are the steps that you can take, right? This organization had, of course, not just one type of problem, but they looked at the data and said, hey, we're actually spending a lot of time on, in this case, restarting a runtime. Yeah. There was a deeper problem where there was some sort of very slowly trickling memory leak, right? They, from an operational perspective, they had to restart it, and they were doing that over all the apps that they had quite a lot of times. As they focused on the important problems first, and that was this one, you know, high impact with actually not that much work. So all good stuff. So let's take a look at some of those steps that everybody here that is watching this recording can start to take. And it starts with exactly that. Analyzing your problem. You need to know what kind of problems that you have. Do you have the same problem that's coming back, right? And that problem, is it easy to automate, right? It doesn't make sense to automate the world, right? Believe me, it doesn't. But analyze and look at remediation or automation opportunities for those problems that are frequent in the number of times that they appear. And then once you have an idea and you've identified those opportunities, start creating, right? So start creating some simple run books, right? And on any automation platform, in this case, Ansible, of course, being the operative example here. And then trigger those run books manually. You have a problem, trigger the run book manually, and you learn, right? You learn about that. And the next step, right, is that when the problem occurs and you trigger the problem, you analyze the results. Is this actually working all the time? Right? You learn and you repeat. You might have to tweak here and there, right? Because you learn. Every environment is different, right? You learn and you repeat. And then afterwards, you integrate, of course, this run book into a manual approval-based remediation process. So Dynatrace detects a problem, sends this problem over to your ticketing solution. And in there, you have an approval that says, yes, trigger remediation, and you manually trigger it. And again, here you learn, right? What's my success rate of this remediation? Is it actually every time resolving the problem? And once you get, you're happy with that, automate the entire thing end to end, right? So it's actually, it's simplified, but it does boil down to this, right? It's learn, trust, and then automate.
Yeah. I want to add one more thing to this here, and maybe you do this anyway, but what I try to promote also is, maybe I don't know how to best call it. I once called it test-driven operations. And what that means, right? If you're creating runbooks, it's basically code, right? It's code that you should always consider that code as part of your application, because it does something to keep your application healthy. And therefore you should also treat it as code. And that means you should also test it. So I think like the whole shifting left approach of not only creating and validating those in production, but also try to figure out how you can do this in pre-production, maybe through chaos testing, to bring your system into a state where these problems come up, and then you can validate if your auto remediation also works. I think this is also a really important piece to the puzzle from my side.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Chaos engineering plays, it's one of those concepts that leans very closely to what we're doing here, right? So I completely agree.
Cool, but
all
awesome.
Right.
5 steps are always great. A recipe, thank you so much. Yeah.
It's also easy. It's just one hand. All right.
Exactly.
So let's take a look at the demo. And before, what I'm going to do is, I'm not the person for secrets, right? So I'm just going to maybe refresh. Hopefully I didn't get kicked out. No, I didn't. All right. I'm going to start my workflow already because it needs some time to warm up, and it makes everything just go a little bit more smoothly. So what I'm going to do is here I'm going to launch this canary shift playbook inside Ansible. So launching that, and before we take a look at the results, right? Let's see what it is exactly that we're going to be talking about today. And the demo that I'm going to show you, we have Ansible, right? We have a containerized application that is running somewhere, instrumented, of course, by Dynatrace, and then we have our Dynatrace environment. So what I just did, right, is in Ansible, I triggered a canary deployment. So I have an app deployed in 2 versions, V1 and V2, for lack of better names. And V1 is good and V2 is bad. Nothing too complex there either. So using Ansible, I actually triggered, I'm actually slowly shifting more and more traffic to my new, AKA bad version. But, and this is super, super important, when I do that, right, I'm also telling Dynatrace about it. I think, Andy, you've done many clinics before in the past where we're talking about our APIs, and specifically the Events API. The Events API plays a critical role here because this Events API allows us to feed more information about what is happening inside our environments, especially when it comes to applications, to Dynatrace, right? You send an event over, you make sure that it's attaching to the correct entity, in this case, our service, right? And this becomes important because Dynatrace and our Davis AI, what does it do with events? It uses them for root cause analysis. So you have a problem, right? Dynatrace, Davis will analyze all the dependencies, right, of that entity, but also all the events that happened. And if Dynatrace then detects, and we'll see that later on, it will leverage those events to identify the root cause. But we'll get to that later. So we tell Dynatrace about it. So Dynatrace, right, it'll monitor our SLOs, right? It's, I defined one for my canary health, right? And it will monitor the change in the configuration. It'll see at some point, right, my SLO is in a bad state. Yeah, I'm no longer meeting it. And of course, through our baseline analysis, we also will open a problem. Yeah. Now, where this becomes super important is that we actually can see this here, and maybe not highlighted well enough, but you can see that we are actually tracking that configuration change event, the load balancer change, as a potential root cause. Now, this is important because as Dynatrace detects the problem and informs Ansible about the problem happening, inside the problem details, it includes the root cause and the corrective action that is to be taken, and it tells that to Ansible. Now, how does Ansible know which corrective action to take? This is an important mindset that I always talk about to my customers. When you do a change, right? When you make any change, you tell Dynatrace about it, but you're already thinking about, well, what do I do if things go wrong, right? What are my corrective actions? And because we tell Dynatrace about this corrective action, right, Dynatrace can identify which action to take and tell Ansible to do exactly that. And then, of course, Ansible will go and check if there has been any previous corrective actions, and it will then perform the remediation tasks that are needed for this action. And that's it, right?
It's really powerful.
Let's take a look on how that looks like inside Dynatrace. Where's my mouse? Here it is. All right, so this is the screen I had open earlier. And the reason why I also wanted to show is because I don't like to wait. I'm not a very good radio presenter. So hopefully the problem and everything manifests and showed and everything already by itself. So I have a playbook, like I said, that slowly shifts every 2 minutes, more and more traffic to my new version. Started with 30%, then 70%. And I also actually have a dashboard. So let's take a look at that dashboard, the Canary Tracker dashboard that I have. And what does this dashboard do, right? And you can actually see it already in action. Colors, not maybe the best chosen, but you can see that I actually have here the load by version. So normally I have my version 1, which is my good version, right? And then you can see at a certain point in time, more and more traffic to my V2, and my V1 version is actually getting less traffic. You can see as well that the failure rate, right, for my V1 is, my bad version is of course fairly high. And at a certain point in time, right, we can see that a problem has been opened for my entity, for that service that I have deployed. So let's go and take a look at that problem.
Maybe Kristof, can you do me one favor? I don't want to interrupt the flow, but I have to. What's nice in this screen, actually, you see that Dynatrace already detected a problem, even though your SLO is not yet read. So it actually gives you a warning sign and say, hey, there's a problem. And by the way, if you don't act now, it will also impact the SLO. And I think that's also the nice magic behind all of the correlation we do, not just between components, but also to your business objectives.
Yeah, no, definitely. That is, almost glanced over that. Thanks for bringing that up, Andy. So let's go and take a look. All right, so we have, of course, a problem that has been opened. And so we can actually see here failure rate increase on my service. So what Dynatrace will do, right? It will take, of course, that problem. You can actually see here some more details, right? And you can see, okay, the problem has been open for a while. And this is my impacted service, right? And we even also see the root cause here. So we have an entire flow. We have information about, okay, we have our service, we have our configuration change event that was taken from the service. I will show you later on the service entity as well directly, right? And we can actually see all the things that are happening here. And this is where it becomes very important, because as you can see here, I have here a remediation action. Yeah, so I'm going and actually telling already in my configuration change event what it is that I need to do. And it is a template, a job that I need to launch inside Ansible. And that will be done by the event that is sent to Ansible by Dynatrace when it opens that problem. So let's take a quick look here on the service, on how that would look like, right? Of course, here we have a bit more detail. We can see that, oh yeah, I have, version 1 and version 4 in this case that are being deployed, right? And we can see a lot of information on the entity here, right? We can see the build versions, the release versions, don't necessarily have to match, of course, where they're running and so forth. And you can see here the entire history of what actually has been happening. Yeah, because it says here, all dynamic requests increase failure rate. That's actually the problem that Dynatrace is attached to this entity as well. It attaches it as an event. But we can see the history of what has happened of all those configuration change events, right? So we can see that, okay, we started with 30%. That's the remediation action, right? Then we go to 70%. And finally, we're at 100%. Yeah. So in reality, right, I try to speed things up because, well, it's a demo, right? Try to speed things up. But in reality, you would actually detect this problem, or you would spread out the load increase a lot longer. And even the organizations that I found that are the most mature will not wait for a problem. They will actually, using release validation capabilities, ask Dynatrace, is it still good, right? Am I seeing a change in failure rates, even minute as it might be, enough to say, hey, there's something wrong with this new build? But you start somewhere, right? Like crawl, walk, run mechanism. And already here we can see as well that there was already be an event sent that reverted all the traffic back to 0%. Now, how did that happen? Let's go back to our problem. So we have a problem. We see, hey, here, 2 affected SLOs. Kind of to come back to what you were talking about, Andy. Business goals and problems, right, are often related. So we want to track them in context of each other, right? And here at the bottom, right, we have actually a little bit of history of what's happening here, right? So what we have done is when we trigger our Ansible playbook, we actually are sending an event back to the problem saying that we started our remediation playbook, and when it's finished, right, we actually said, well, the remediation action was successfully executed, meaning that we try to take some corrective action. That doesn't necessarily mean, of course, that the problem has been resolved. We leave that up to Dynatrace. Dynatrace will be the one telling us that the problem is gone, right? Because the action that I might have taken or that Ansible might have taken automatically might just not resolve the problem, right? So we leave that up to Dynatrace to do that. And that is then the playbook that is triggered inside Ansible. Cool. How this will look like inside Ansible, right? You can actually see it here, right? So this is the action that I took at about 11:22, right? To shift more and more traffic to my new version. This is Dynatrace triggering a problem, and then also Ansible to remediate, right? And this is Ansible executing, sorry, here number 18, the canary reset, is Ansible triggering a reset action based on the information that Dynatrace provided on the corrective actions that have been taken.
So Kristof, if I can recap a little bit, because you said the remediation action is an interesting piece, meaning as part of the deployment, you do not only tell Dynatrace there is a deployment and I'm making this change or this configuration change, but optionally, and I think it's optionally, you can give additional context, like, hey, if something would fail, this is what I would do. I give you context, and this context could be, like in your case, even a URL to a playbook, right? People that might not be that mature, I've also seen people just use this as a context where it just has text in there, and the text could be restart or rollback or something, and then you do something with it. But it's a really powerful feature that, as an architect, as somebody that is responsible for your platform, as an SRE, if you can say there is a configuration change and I already think ahead of what would be the course correcting action that I would take, maybe start small with triggering that script, but then maybe doing something manually like restart. And if you're comfortable, then you also automate that next step. And I think this is why it's extremely powerful. But it really, as you said earlier, it forces you as a mature, if you really want to become more mature, to think about what could potentially go wrong and what would be my course correcting actions. And I give enough context so that my automation can do the whole end-to-end automation to bring the system back.
Yeah, no, definitely. Most organizations that I work with, they start with linking back to like whatever information they have about the change. There's somewhere internally a document that describes exactly that. And it's all about getting that mean time to repair as short as possible, right? You don't have to automate straight away, but what can you do to make it as short as possible? Well, if the person who gets the ticket, the problem by Dynatrace, already knows where to look for or what the change was, and can already highlight a lot faster because of that what it is that person needs to do, then you're already winning, right? And then the next step indeed would be looking at automating that. I completely agree.
Hey, as part of a demo, I'm not sure if you still have planned to go into some of the technicalities. Like, could you, for those people that don't know, show where you set up the integration from Dynatrace to Ansible?
Yeah, very good, Andy. I will certainly and happily do that. So within Dynatrace, right, we can actually set up all of our problem integrations in the settings menu, right? And of course, I didn't do this manually because I'm in an automation group, right? So we use Monaco for that. But you can set all your problem notifications up in here, right? So you go into your environment, go to settings, integration, and then problem notification. My network is a little bit slow today, so hopefully that is not causing it to be too slow.
It's always great to see that others also blame it on the network.
It's always the network.
It's always the network, yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
And you can actually see here the integration. So I've got an integration to Ansible. I've got others as well, you can see that. But it points it down to, well, you give it a name, you put the URL of the templates that you want to call, and then you put your username and your password. And that's it, actually.
Yeah.
You link it, of course, to an alerting profile. That's it.
And as you also show here, right, you have different integrations set up. That means, folks, you can set up as many integrations as you like. We call them problem notifications, and there's different types as well. Now, I know today we're focusing on Ansible, so that's great. So we have this notification type Ansible, but if you can do me the favor and just open up that drop-down box, right, you can see there's a couple of other things in here that you can do.
And then there's the one that's kind of, if there's nothing in this list that matches what you have, there's always a webhook integration under custom. And that actually allows you to do basically whatever you want. You can construct your own payloads using the placeholders and the problems and tags and other information. Super, super powerful.
Yeah. So that's cool. So that's the integration. Dynatrace detects a problem and then notifies Ansible. And then, you know, all of the problem context gets pushed over to Ansible, and then you can do whatever you want in that runbook. The other integration, if you could quickly show it in your Ansible script that is doing the canary change. You mentioned about the importance of sending events over to Dynatrace. If you have a chance on the Ansible side.
I can show you the job.
Yeah.
Here.
If that.
So this, oops, sorry. This actually what it does, all right, is triggering a Jenkins pipeline.
Ah, okay.
Because I'm using Jenkins to manage my deployments, right? And so I'm not going to bypass that. So, but that's fine because Jenkins pipeline is also good. So I have here a pipeline for shifting traffic that I'm just calling. And if you, of course. If you take a look at the one that run, the latest one. Look at the console output. You can actually see, right, it is going to, at some point, where is it? Yeah, it's sending an event
to events API,
Dynatrace. Now, I'm not sure if it's valuable for the people here in the audience, but they can watch the recording, right? So if I go a little bit fast, they can always go. But if we take a look at what is actually happening, there's a couple of important parts here. So we have here the Jenkins pipeline here, right? And what it will do, right? It will basically just push a configuration event based on certain tag rules, right? So what do you want this to attach to with information? And with then adding the remediation URL as a custom property.
And folks, if you're interested in this, I have a whole dedicated observability clinic on the power of the events API. This is where Arishan, one of our colleagues, he really went into much detail on how to send events to Dynatrace, especially the deployment event that you are sending here, or the configuration change event. So check this out. No, but Kristof, this is awesome. So you're making that the best practice is you're making a change to your system, whether it's a deployment of a new build, whether it's switching traffic, whether it is scaling up, scaling down, whatever it is. But the point is, the more you can tell Dynatrace about the deployment, who initiated that deployment, was it done by Kristof, by Andy, was it done by a scheduler, was it done by Jenkins, whoever, send this information over. And then also think about, what would you do in case this change is causing a problem? Would you just call somebody? Would you point them to a document with manual steps? Would you just ping somebody? Or do you have another script that you can already call because you've already automated that step? Add this as additional context. And then Dynatrace will detect, is there a problem? It will then see that you sent events in that are then the potential root cause, and can then really forward it to your auto-remediation tool, like in this case, Ansible. It's a beautiful story, and it works. It's nice. It's really nice.
Yeah, it works really, really well. I know we're at the end of our session, but I want to maybe share a couple of final thoughts. Always nice. And the first one is start small, right? So there will undoubtedly, be a lot of large organizations or people from large organizations who are watching this. Start with a small team. Start with a team that has an automation mindset, and have some drive for innovation. Pace yourself, right? Don't try to go too fast, because then you will probably make some mistakes, and then the experience of automation is not going to be that good. You need to be able to trust in the quality of your own automation, but the only way that you can do that is by learning, rinse, repeat. And the third one, I think I already talked about this a bit. Choose what to automate. Don't try to automate the world, right? Because once you start really with edge cases and you are focusing a lot on that, you will not get a lot of benefit. You need to automate those tasks that are worth the effort and worth the time investment from. And then last but not least, and that kind of depends on when this is going to go live, we have an entirely dedicated hands-on training session at Perform, our upcoming conference. For those who are watching this after Perform, that's Perform 2023. It's not too late to sign up. It's a great 4-hour session where you will actually get to do this, right? It's not slideware, it's not a video, it's somebody with automation experience that will talk you through this and then show you how to do this.
Hey, I got a final question now to you. If people are watching this and they want to get some ideas on the scripts that you wrote, what's the best way to get in touch or access to some of your scripts? Is templates? They just reach out to you, or there's something out there on GitHub, or where would they start?
Yeah, we are going to make these public. I just need to create a repository where this is all sitting. Especially those the Ansible playbooks. We will put them public. They can reach out to me via whichever form or format. I'm sure they'll find my name somewhere on any social platform. So yes, that's the way for now, and then I will share with you once they're live.
Perfect. Yeah, and folks, this will be published hopefully today on the day of the recording, and that means we're still pre-Perform 2023. So if you are going to Vegas and you still haven't decided on hot days, hands-on training days, this is definitely a great session to attend.
Definitely. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Andy, for giving me the opportunity to speak today.
Of course. Thank you for being here, and I know this is a hot topic. We will have you back on more automation topics. We also have a lot of our users in our guild, in our automation guild, that come up with new use cases all the time, and I'm pretty sure some of those we will make it into a public clinic as well. And then it would be great to have you presented, because you work with these organizations on a regular basis, and it's best to hear from you.
Yep, happy to. All right.
With this, I want to say thank you and bye-bye. Cheers.
Bye-bye.